Okay. All right, welcome to the regular meeting of ANC 34G. I'm Randy Speck, the chair of the commission. I represent an area that is bounded essentially by Nebraska and Nevada and Broad Branch Road. We are happy to have all of you here tonight. I think most of the people here have some agenda item they're interested in, so we're glad to have you. We'll introduce the other commissioners. Becky, you want to begin?
Yes, I'm Rebecca Madak. I'm 34G04, and I have Lafayette Elementary School and Lafayette Park. Basically, go from Utah to Broad Branch, Nebraska and Morrison, to basically Tennyson, but I jog over to Western for 1 block. Okay, that's it.
Hi everyone, my name is ABRA. I represent 34G01, Hawthorne and parts of Market Woods.
Hello everyone, I'm Shanda Tuck Garfield and I represent ANC 34G02. I'm on the eastern side of the district for our facilities here, closest to Rock Creek Park. Thank you for coming.
I'm Chris Rondeluti, 3G07, which is down and roughly by Military, Reno, Nebraska, and Nevada.
Hi everybody, I'm Jerry Mallitz, 3G05, roughly from Chevy Chase Circle down Connecticut to Military and across to Broad Branch.
Hi everybody, good evening. My name is Dan Bradfield, I'm 3G06, and I represent Connecticut Avenue west over to Chevy Chase Park down to Military.
Okay, we have all of our commissioners here, all 7, so we can conduct business tonight. The first item on our agenda is the adoption of the agenda. It's been published on our website and on the Chevy Chase listserv, as well as I think portions of it were in the Northwest Current. Are there any modifications or changes? I should point out we did make some modifications to the order of events for tonight, but the substance has remained basically the same, just changed the order of event. Any modifications or changes anyone has? All those in favor of adopting the agenda? 7-0. Okay. The first item then is commission announcements, and I have just a couple. The first is that there will be a First Responders Appreciation Day on May 17th, 2018. Now, this is something that's occurred in the past, sponsored by the Citizens Advisory Council of the 2nd District Police, and it's been limited in the past to 2nd District police officers. And it basically is giving them a meal during the day. And because the officers work shifts, it begins at 10:30 in the morning and goes to midnight, so that all of the officers can take advantage of having a free meal. And it's usually food that's been donated by establishments in the community, and then a lot of volunteers who help serve and set the whole thing up. This is going to be expanded this year to include all first responders, so that would mean all the other police departments in the area, University Police, Metro Police, all of those kinds of police officers. It will include fire and EMS as well, and so in total they're expecting as many as 500 first responders will be participating. And so it's going to be a big undertaking, bigger than they've done in the past, and they do need volunteers. And if you are interested in volunteering, they're going to work basically in 2-hour shifts, so you can help serve for a couple of hours, sometime during the day or at night, or you can make a contribution in terms of cash, or they're looking for cases of water, bottled water. And you can contact Samantha Nolan. Our number is 202-244-2620, or nolantutor@yahoo.com. That'll all be in our minutes. And any help would be appreciated for that. The second announcement I have is the Carnegie Neighborhood Lecture. I went to one this last Thursday that was absolutely spectacular. It was a description of Carnegie's contributions over the years to astronomy, and it was pretty amazing. And they're going to have another neighborhood lecture, the last of the series in the spring on May 24th. I know that's a while off, but I wanted to get it on people's calendars. And the topic is harder, better, faster, stronger, how high pressure and superconductor computers will shape the materials of the future. And I'm sure it will be a very interesting lecture. Those are all always jam-packed at Carnegie too, so get there early. All right, Becky, you have announcements? No.
I have one announcement, and it is about sidewalks on Chestnut Street, my perennial favorite topic. For those of you who've been here before, there will be sidewalk construction on Chestnut Street starting in the second half of 2019. And while that does seem like a ways away, that is big news for the people who live on Chestnut Street. And I spent some time this weekend passing out flyers to folks, letting them know that, and letting them know about an upcoming meeting with DDOT Director Jeff LaRouchian at the corner of Chestnut and Western next Monday at 6:30. So if you care about sidewalks on Chestnut Street, come to the corner of Chestnut and Western at 6:30 on April 30th. At the corner of Chestnut and Western.
Where the sidewalk,
The north side.
North Street. Old Chestnut.
You got it. Yes, sir.
Is that a painful process?
Yes.
Did it take a long time?
Yes. We can talk about it more.
Many years.
Doesn't have to be.
Does somebody have to get killed first?
I know. I don't know. All right.
Okay, Shannon?
No, I don't have any
No announcements.
No, that's.
Okay, I expected Becky to do this and I didn't want to steal your thunder, but there is a public hearing on smart streetlights, right?
Oh, yeah, I know.
It's on, I was mentioning it, Saturday, May 19th, from 1 until 3 at Palisades Library. And another one Wednesday, May 23rd, from 6 to 8 at the Vermont Riggs Neighborhood
Library. And this is a joint project that's being put on by DDOT and the Office of Chief Technology Officer and the Office of Public-Private Partnerships to modernize the city's 75,000 streetlights. Becky's been very involved in that for some time, and we have a streetlight task force. And I don't know whether we're participating in that public meeting or not.
Well, the public meetings I've gone to before have really just been mix and mingles because it turns to be it's all the same people. It's the manufacturers, it's DDOT, a few members of the community, it's the DC Lighting Task Force, and then of course I showed up. So even though they had presentations, they never put them on. So we're moving forward. The DC Streetlight Task Force with Dolores Pastrana has been doing a wonderful job for the city, and allegedly, we don't have it in writing, that DDOT is looking at only 2,700 kelvins for the whole city, but that's not 100% given because he wavers on that a little bit, but we're still pushing for that. And the DC Street Lighting Task Force, they are going to have an advisory committee with representatives from each ward. I'm not going to be on that. I'm going to let a community member be on that because Dolores will be on it. She covers everything, and she's working really closely with the manufacturers, and I'm really happy that she came into the picture because it really saved us a lot, and I'll concentrate just on our ANC.
Good. Okay, terrific. The one thing that I didn't realize about this is that the modernization is going to include a district-wide broadband Wi-Fi network too.
Right, that was raised 10, 15 years ago with the first committee that talked about street lighting, and then they're talking about you can dim them too, so like the police really want bright lights. And this is where the confusion comes in. Color temperature has nothing to do with the lumens, which is the brightness. So they're talking about if there's a crime in the neighborhood and the police want to respond, they can flip a switch and turn up the lighting and then put it back down so you can sleep at night without being impacted. I don't know if that's going to come to fruition, but that's what everyone's talking about right now.
The Office of the Chief Technology Officer, which is why he's included, I guess, because of the Wi-Fi component.
Yeah, it's also collusion, cooperation or collaboration between VDOT and LT3. The street lighting issue.
Okay, we'll turn to community announcements, and I saw Anthony come in a moment ago. Anthony?
I'll be very brief.
Done. Okay. Hi, I'm Anthony. I'm from Councilmember Che's office. I have two brief reminders. One is that Saturday, May 5th, the council member is hosting a chat with Che at Coffee Nature at 4224 Fessenden Street Northwest. It's right at the intersection of Fessenden and Wisconsin, next to Pete's Pizza, kind of between Tenley and Friendship Heights. She will be there from 11:30 to 1, and be staffed by, if anyone's worked with D. Smith in our office or one of our newer staffer, Nick Mendelson. Both or either one of them will be there, so feel free to stop by. Again, Saturday, May 5th from 11:30 to 1 at Coffee Nature on Fessenden. Second, in fiscal year 2017, maybe 2016, the council member funded a food waste drop-off neighborhood composting pilot within the Department of Public Works. In that pilot, each ward, or one location in each ward, was selected as a food waste drop-off location on weekends. In Ward 3, that location is UDC Farmers Market, and they will begin their summer food waste collection in also on May 5th. So if you have been collecting food waste, now is the time to drop it off. I've left some flyers with frequently asked questions and further information about the program. There's about 10 of them in the back, so feel free to grab one. Now there's 9. Feel free to grab one as you leave. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony.
Oh, they're in the back.
Okay, I see Ian still rummaging through his backpack back there, but you're on, Ian.
All right. Hey, I'm Ian Magruder, the Ward 3 liaison for Mayor Bowser's office. The mayor finished up Earth Week last week. She launched it with a ribbon cutting at H.D. Woodson High School in Ward 7, cutting the ribbon on one of the largest municipal solar arrays in the country. Then kicked off 14 new electric circulator buses for the city, which actually start running on May 1st. And then on Saturday, she had her citywide cleanups. One large cleanup in each ward. Ward 3, we cleaned up Forest Hills Park, a lot of fun. And at that time, she announced some new initiatives around Adopt the Block and better data collection with it. And then also a new initiative called Adopt Your City, which is a partnership between National Park Service, DPR, DOEE, and the Mayor's Office of the Clean City. And then also had a pet waste outreach campaign to try to get more residents to pick up their pet waste. Rats are actually attracted to pet waste, and also it can get them to the rivers, pollute rivers. So that's about all the updates I have. All right.
Thank you, Ian. Okay, any other community announcements? Anyone has anything that we ought to be aware of? Okay, if not, we'll move to the substantive part of the agenda. I don't see anyone from Councilmember Todd's office here. So, okay, the first item on the agenda is one that is in Commissioner Bradfield's single-member district, the application for a liquor license at Little Beast Bistro, which is across the street from the community center. Dan, you want to take that?
There's an application for the liquor license for a new restaurant that's been proposed, an Italian bistro on the corner right outside here. Gordon Food Group. Aaron and Robert Gordon are here, and why don't you come up and kind of give us the layout of it and proposal.
Hello, I'm Aaron Gordon. Thank you so much for having us. We've been here before. We've gotten a little bit further down the line for our new cafe and bistro is what we're calling it. So the intent is to open it about 7 a.m. every day with coffee and fresh made pastries every morning, egg sandwiches and so forth. And then throughout the day become more of a bistro with a wood-fired oven cooking, including pizzas, cauliflower, wood-fired cauliflower, pastas, etc. I actually put a copy of our working menu for each of you there, so you notice we have a little bit of everything. Maybe a little bit, some higher-end dishes that you might find at most pizza shops. We are, of course, we put in for the liquor license. We also want to discuss our outdoor patio. My father and I have, my father moved in when I was 4 years old. I'm 44 now, so 40 years in the neighborhood. I just moved back to the neighborhood. I'm on Stuyvesant, so I can't quite remember which of you represent Stuyvesant. That was a little hard to figure out. Okay, great. So I left you with a couple of things, and I have a few that others can pick up as well, including, like I said, a draft menu, sort of a 3D overview of our proposed outdoor patio on McKinley Street, which seems to be the one that's we're here to talk about a little bit more, and finally a floor plan and some of the chairs and tables that we're going to be using as well, with all the measurements for the indoor and outdoor patio. So that's what we have for now. I think we applied, we just simply applied for the liquor license. We applied for the most hours that are possible, but obviously we're here to talk to you about that and change those as you see, as we all see fit.
I guess the first thing I'd say is there's, as you probably know, on the hours, we've pretty much become uniform in allocating the hours across up and down the corridor, and so they're a little bit smaller than what you've obviously proposed, which most people do in the application for the permits. If you guys are amenable to that, that's a condition that we would like to put on, which or something I would like to see, which is 10 to 1 on Monday through Thursday, 10 to 2 Friday and Saturday, and 10 to 2 Sunday. Now those hours pretty much have not ever been utilized by any of the other businesses. I suspect you're probably find that you'll never come close to them as well. But that's kind of a uniform thing that we've begun and we hope we should do.
So we're perfectly happy with those hours. Certainly the nighttime hours of 1 and 2 are perfectly fine. Like you said, I seriously doubt we ever get to those hours. I would like to take a look at the opening hours of 10 o'clock, because if we have a brunch starting at 9 o'clock, we might like to serve champagne. So I don't know if that's set in stone, but I'd like to maybe explore that. I seriously doubt I think 8 a.m. is the hours that we applied for, but maybe 8 or 9 o'clock start on Saturday and Sunday.
6 a.m. now? License say at 6 a.m. Okay. Well, I'll just do my couple additional things and let the other commissioners jump in. Trash, always important, so I'd like, there's kind of a regular condition that we've made the other businesses jump on, which is scheduled pickup 7 days a week. If you have a different plan, just let us know what your intent is. Let's see.
So on the trash, if you like, we have several restaurants as part of the Gordon Restaurant Group. On 14th Street, we have a couple drafting table, and Red Light down in Penn Quarter, we have Bakers and Baristas and Red Light. And because it's food heavy, we're very familiar with this. And we've always had 6 to 7 days a week pickup. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult or tricky, the Townley trash. I'm not sure if they pick up on Sunday. I'll have to double check that, but I believe we can find certainly 6, and that's what we do at all of our restaurants. And I certainly can do my best to get 7.
Okay. And no glass before 7 a.m. or after 10 p.m., Sunday through Thursday?
And what?
No glass disposal? So,
Oh, that's fair, sure.
And 11 p.m. on Friday and Saturday?
Yes, absolutely.
What was the last one?
I'm sorry?
Record glass.
Glass disposal not to occur before 7 a.m. or after 10 p.m. Monday through Thursday.
So obviously you don't want excess noise and clinking is the idea. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
I think that's it for me right now. Any other questions? Andy, I know we can get to
This is just with regard to the liquor license
Liquor
application.
license, right,
Yeah. I had one question. Yeah, I think maybe you answered it with regard to this 6 or 7 day pickup.
Just for everybody, there's a liquor license, and then there's a separate public space license. So there are two separate items that we'll deal with over time.
Yep.
No, I don't have any further questions.
I'd just like to clarify something. You brought up the hours to be closing, well, I wasn't sure if you were talking about end of serving outdoors at 1 a.m. and 2 a.m. or end of alcoholic beverage outdoors 1 a.m. and 2 a.m. Can you clarify what the plans are for that?
I'm happy to discuss those. We talked about 1 o'clock on the weekdays, 2 o'clock on the weekends.
So that's
We have
because there's 2 different things listed. Hours of operation, inside premises and for outdoor sidewalk cafe, and then there's hours of alcoholic beverage sales, service, and consumption inside and outside.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you know what, I'm embarrassed to say, I forget what we requested as far as
For the
outside.
hours of operation, it says 6 a.m., what it currently says is 6 a.m. to 2 a.m., and then Friday and Saturday, 6 a.m. to 3 a.m. For alcoholic beverages, it says 8 a.m. to 2 a.m., and for Friday and Saturday, it says 8 a.m. to 3 a.m. So when we were talking about the change of hours, I wasn't sure if which of those 2 sets of hours we were talking about.
So I was certainly talking about all the hours, but if there's a different standard for outdoor than indoor, I'm happy to discuss that as well.
These are traditionally default, because they're the max that any application will file. I'll send your counsel did that probably for you. And based upon our settlement, our agreements that we have, settlement agreements, neighborhood settlement agreements, I would suspect that they would be one and the same.
That's correct. So service and liquor service.
So it's not.
Correct.
Did you understand what he's talking about, the settlement agreement, he wants you to sign?
Yeah, we have done this several times, and we're happy to sign it, and we're happy to do whatever's necessary to make this happy for everyone.
Yeah, we do have a short time to get this in for the liquor board. We did get an extension from them. Thank you for your cooperation in helping to get that done. But we got the extension only until Wednesday, the 25th. And so that means that we really need to finalize this. We can talk about it tonight and get the basic parameters, but we need to put it in writing and reduce it to a settlement agreement that we can submit to ABRA by Wednesday. So it will require some diligent effort on all our part to make sure that happens.
Absolutely. In the past, I've used an attorney to help write it up, but I found that you have a pretty good template, and we're happy to work with that template, and we can just adjust it as we see fit. Okay.
So I don't see the dates you just mentioned on this. None of these dates look correspond with what you just said.
No, they actually, this was last week, we discovered that we have our meeting tonight, but the expiration date for protest was the 17th. So we said to the ABRA board, and I talked with the general counsel on this, is there a way we can just extend it for a couple of days, for a few days, so that we will have an opportunity to vote on it here without having an automatic protest or a waiving protest. It would have been a waiver of a protest if we didn't do anything. And so rather than not doing anything, we convinced them, and the Gordon Group agreed, that we could postpone the protest date until the 25th.
Thank you.
If the commission,
Just last week, so it was.
and if the commissioners don't have any further, I was going to say, there were some neighborhood individuals I want to make sure that have some thoughts, and would like to ask you questions as well. So,
Mine's just a quick one. This goes back to an issue that we dealt with last summer in terms of the rodents and some of the businesses. Is that a part of, I mean, at that point, I know, Dan, you had dealt with some other businesses and gotten them to deal with the trash and the cleanup. And I just wanted to ensure that since you're a new business in the neighborhood, that you're aware that that was an issue that was important to our agency. The businesses are both cleaning up and ensuring that we do not, because in the summer and when the heat rises, that becomes an issue here. So I just wanted to see, Dan, and also to you all, the board and restaurant, we be committed to resolving that issue and doing what's necessary to ensure.
Absolutely. We've had a shop in the middle of DuPont Circle, so we fully understand the problem. Like I said before, we do 6 or 7 days a week as far as trash pickup. We also use an independent operator and Orkin to come out 2 times per month to spray all of our restaurants. And we expect to do the exact same thing here. And we're happy to put that into the agreement if you'd like.
That may be another reason to have 7-day-a-week pickup too, unless you've got an absolutely closed container, so that you make sure that I guess on Sunday, when you're still going to be open, you're still going to be putting things in there, and it's not going to be open to rats during that time period.
I'm 99% sure we can commit to that. I've just got to make sure, I don't 100% know who does trash on Sunday. So I'll just have to figure that out. If anybody does it, we will commit to that.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. If you could come up to this podium.
if you don't mind.
Mike, and also appear on the video better.
Yeah, right.
All right, good evening. I just wanted to follow up on Karen Sasahara. Just a quick question I wanted to follow up on a point that Mr. Bradfield had made regarding the operating hours. I understand that the prevailing practice for the applicant would be to max out on the hours just for the purpose of the application. I believe, Mr. Bradfield, you said that prevailing practice in the neighborhood is that people aren't taking advantage of the full time. What is the prevailing practice in the neighborhood? I'm a little new here, 3 years. And is there any other establishment similar to the one that Mr. Gordon is requesting that is open until 1, 2, or 3 a.m.?
Well, there are several. There are, and I have to be honest because there are multiple entities. I don't know their exact operating hours, but I think there's only one entity that is open till 2, and the others are 1, and that is only on Friday and Saturdays.
And is the fact that they operate until 1 and 2 part of a settlement that they have, or prevailing practice in terms of just being a part of the neighborhood?
Both, in most cases.
Both the Parthenon.
The uniformity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Both 1 o'clock.
Right, because of the lounge, right?
Right.
The lounge, yeah, and I can,
The
because
lounge,
that's in the middle.
the lounge is the.
Right, that's in the middle of a commercial strip.
The uniformity of a lot of these, there was a period of time, and Randy, I don't know this stuff, but each establishment was treated very to their own particular need. And what we found, I think, over a period of time was really more uniformed mean this in the best way, behave all in the same, under the same rules.
Right.
Acting and behaving the same way. And fair is fair, and whatever goes for one should go for the other, should go for the other. And then we all operate within those realms.
Right. No, and that makes sense because they all are on the Connecticut Avenue commercial strip. What is a little bit different, of course, about the establishment that Mr. Gordon is requesting, it is literally on the corner of the commercial strip, and it starts to get into, actually the first 3 houses are myself and 2 other neighbors. So there's a little bit of a difference there, which leads me into one question, if I could ask about that. Mr. Gordon, do you have any intention of playing any music, either live or recorded in the establishment? And if you are considering that now or later on, will that music be piped outside?
No, go ahead. We don't need to be too far.
The answer is yes to recorded music. That's pretty standard inside. No to recorded music outside. And we have no plans for live music inside.
For the recorded music on the inside, would that be within the DC sound limits for establishments similar to the one that you are? In other words, would it require soundproofing and the windows would stay closed?
For the most part, we have one window that will open, but we're not going to be blasting music.
Okay.
But we can also put into the agreement, we've done this in the past, some sort of standard of sound. We're happy to do that.
Okay. I'm not trying to give you a hard time. I actually used to live in Adams Morgan and lived right across from a whole lot of these, and so spent quite a bit of time learning the regs for DC soundproofing, the percentage of food versus alcohol sales. So I'm just trying to get a better picture of the establishment that you try. And as I said, it is a little bit different from the strip because it's literally on the corner of Connecticut Avenue and McKinley, which in about a matter of a dozen or so yards turns into a residential area. So that's why I wanted to know whether that would be outside. And then later when you get to the space, you talk about 89, seating for 89. Would that be split on both sides of that corner? Because I did notice that on the side right in front of the Capitol Bikes, that's actually an incline. And in order to seat that many people, wouldn't you have to level that incline and make it straight? I'm just trying to sort of game this out a little bit, but I may have exceeded my time. I can see that.
Yeah, why don't we get to that? No. But the answer is yes, you have to.
Let me just add one little nugget of fact. While I've been on the commission, I think there have been at least three new applications. One was for vacant, another was for the American Diner, which did not serve liquor and then can serve liquor, and the other was the Avenue. And in all 3 of those, we really were pretty careful to have exactly the same conditions for each one. And so the conditions I think we've got in mind here, and the ones Dan described, are taken verbatim from what they had. And so it's just a matter basically of fairness and treating all of the businesses the same. And with regard to Macon in particular, we did have a concern about residences because immediately behind Macon are, just across the alley, are residences. And especially when Macon had put a party room in the back, and there were concerns about noise there too. And so we addressed those as well, basically along the same lines as we're talking about here. Only inside music, soundproofing, all those kinds of things.
Kathy?
Hi, good evening. I'm Kathy Ledin. I'm one of the residents who will be most affected by this. And I really only found out about it about 3 or 4 weeks ago when I read the sign that was posted.
Could you speak into the microphone?
I'm sorry. Yeah, Kathy Ledin. I am one of the residents most affected by this. And I only found out about it 3 or 4 weeks ago when I read the poster on the side of the building. And I'm a little surprised because I guess the commission has already discussed this a few times. So, you know, I don't know how we can communicate better so that I think that we're aware of issues that are coming up, but this isn't the first time that's happened, so that's something I wanted to bring to the commission's attention. To me, the issues are the same issues that we would say to any establishment. I cannot imagine 99, I think it says 97 people standing and sitting outside. I went up and down Connecticut Avenue this afternoon and I counted the seating for the other outdoor cafes. The one that's the largest is the Parthenon restaurant, that has 58. So imagine twice that size at the corner here. It's impossible. It's impossible. It could not be done. And without totally restricting public space. And I understand that's a hearing for a separate time, but I'm just appalled at that because I just don't see how that could possibly happen. Secondly, and again, it's a public space issue, but it's an extremely dangerous intersection. You have people, lots of children, and lots of elderly people walking, crossing. To restrict pedestrians to that little bit of space closest to the curb and closest to the road seems unusually punitive to pedestrians. But let me get to the issues at hand tonight, which are more the alcohol and the hours of operation. I've lived here a long time. Perhaps some of these establishments are open till 1 or 2 a.m., not outside. They're just not. During the week or on weekends, they're not. Trash, I've personally, in the last 3 or 4 weeks, witnessed rats running across McKinley Street. This is in coldish weather, right? There's just no possibility that rats are not going to be drawn to this. Next thing I know, we're going to be seeing them with a piece of pizza in their mouth, crossing the street. It's an impossible thought to think that the rats will be contained. And I'm taking particular note of Mr. Gordon's comment that he isn't sure that he can do 7 days a week. 7 days a week should be an absolute condition. 6 days, not a possibility. So, I'm pretty alert to the language that's being used, and I just want to make that very clear. The alcohol, it may be standard practice to give the same conditions to all of the applicants for alcohol licenses. But there isn't any one establishment that's open with outdoor seating till 1, 2, or 3 a.m. There just isn't. I've lived here a long time. There is not. So that is something that would have to be looked at as well. Thirdly, you have a parking issue. There's no parking at any time on McKinley Street in that block. I don't know where the people are going to be parking to frequent this establishment. There's no parking. So I don't know, are we just saying let's hope for the best? To me, that seems to be, that would be required as part of some sort of agreement. Finally, typically in the past with these types of situations, we've always had a memorandum of understanding. My experience is that you need an ironclad memorandum of understanding, and it has to be done with full disclosure from all interested parties, and it has to be ironclad. Without that, we're going to be opening ourselves up for a very, very contentious situation. So, again, alcohol till 1, 2, 3 a.m., just a non-starter. Outdoor cafe serving with music, you say you have no, I'm very alert to your language about you have no plans at this time, but that doesn't mean that you might change your mind in the future. That has got to be part of some sort of memorandum of understanding, that there's no, there are noise provisions that are pretty strict, and we have no outdoor seated restaurants open serving alcohol in this neighborhood till 2 a.m. We just do not. Well, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I have not seen, there are no noise issues to outside serving alcohol. And I have serious reservations about this, and I think it's going to require a lot more than 2 days of discussion to put together a memorandum of understanding that's going to satisfy all these issues.
7th Avenue.
Good evening, I'm Stuart Miles McLean. I live on the 5500 block of 39th Street. Sorry, I found out about this the last minute and got here as quickly as I could. I just basically want to echo a lot of what Kathy was just saying. We already have a lot of problems with the avenue opening up. The ANC apparently decided it was okay to triple the size of that establishment. And we've got deliveries that occur at 4 o'clock in the morning back there. I'm not sure who they're delivering to all the time, but trucks backing up with their hazard warnings in the middle of the night is very, very disruptive. Other night I had to get up my pajamas and go over and complain because they came over with a two-stroke engine to clean the grills at the avenue at midnight. And all these are masonry walls. If you put a whole lot of people outside on McKinley, all the sound they're going to make is going to bounce over onto the residents over there. Unlike behind Magruder's, where there's a buffer of trees, then a street trees, then a street, and more street trees before you get to the residences. Behind all those ones, and because of coming around the corner, we have no buffer. It's the parking lot and then the alley. The buffer that's provided is our trees, and we're responsible for those, and they're mostly deciduous, so all winter long, you get a lot of noise, a lot of lights. So we're very concerned, and also one of our other residents couldn't be here, who's on 39th Street on the other side, also asked me to express his strong concerns. We don't want this to become sort of a bar venue where it's a destination for people that want to come up here and drink and hang out and then go home to wherever they live. We already got a lot of lousy parkers coming in from Maryland using up all of our parking spots. This happens all the time. There's only 8 spots on the 5500 block of 39th Street. And we're thinking about, as neighbors, are we going to have to petition the city so that we have Zone 3 parking only? Because there just aren't spots for the neighbors anymore, because there's only parking on one side of the street on that block, and then the other block. There's 2 5500 blocks of 39th Street, if people don't know. We don't have any buffer to all the noise. Bringing those seats around the corner is just a non-starter for us. And like I said, there's little kids living in several of those houses, and they're trying to go to bed at night and settle down, and it's already noisy enough. There's already not enough parking. Like I said, the avenue is 3 times as big as it was when it was Can Can Fang. So this, to me, just when I saw this today, it's like, it's a real problem. And I guess I echo also what Kathy was saying. Can't get along with sort of, we don't expect to, blah, dot, 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 fill in the blank. There has to be some sort of a written commitment of what's going to happen, that in the future, somebody doesn't just change their mind, well, we didn't plan on it in 2018, but now it's 2020 and things have changed. Because I'm hoping to still be here with my disabled son who lives in our house for a long time to come. Thank you.
This is going to be the last question, I think.
I just want to say we've been, Robin Miles McLean, that was my husband. We live facing the avenue. We've lived here 23 years. Never had problems with anybody waking us up in the middle of the night. It's happening all the time now. And I don't really, when we confronted the guy with he was cleaning outside after midnight, and he said to my husband, "You chose to live here. You can't expect to not be disturbed all hours of the day and night." And that's the owner of the avenue. That's not okay. And then he went on to say, you know, he wants to be a neighborhood hangout. How's that part of the neighborhood?
Complaints about the avenue, we're certainly willing to take those, and we will certainly work on those with the avenue. But I don't think it has anything to do with Gordon Group.
I just, on notice that, you know, it's not neighborly behavior.
I understand, but, you know, we can't just assume people are going to be bad neighbors. You know, if they've been running a lot of restaurants around town, so they've got some experience. Just for the record, too, I should point out, I just looked up the Chevy's Lounge, and their hours are until 2 a.m. Monday through Thursday. And they do have outdoor seating at the lounge. Well,
But they're not around the corner. They're the buffer of the building.
It's the same situation.
That's a good question. Is it?
I'd like to say a couple of quick things before we go on to try to answer some of the questions. I very much appreciate you coming out, and I appreciate your candor and expressing your issues. And I think that the first thing we should say, while you're definitely got good concerns, you definitely have good concerns, and I'd like to try to answer each one as best I possibly can. We're looking at a coffee house here, the first sort of independent coffee house Chevy Chase has ever seen, at least in the 40 years I've been here. We're doing a wood-fired pizza. We're doing a lot of excellent things that Chevy Chase just really hasn't had. So I think we're adding a lot to the neighborhood. We're taking a corner that, frankly, right now is sinfully ugly. And we're going to put a lot of money into making it really beautiful. So going to the questions what you had was, I think you started with 96 people on the side of the block. In our current plans, and we have a huge printouts here, we have several of them. You're welcome to take some as well. We actually have some 3D images here, which will show you the front of the space. We actually only have 52 seats on the side. And really that will be our, the other side on Connecticut Avenue has the other 30, I think it is. So it's I believe it's 82 in total. And on the Connecticut Avenue side, it's not 96, it's actually 52. So that's, yeah.
Since Connecticut Avenue is a more public space, larger sidewalk, why wouldn't you put more seats on Connecticut Avenue?
That's a great question, and everybody else puts most of their seats on Connecticut Avenue. Unfortunately for us, we have a bus stop and many other things, a lot of you might call street clutter directly in front of our space. That's one thing. The second thing is that it comes down to weather. When you do an outdoor patio, you want to have good weather. And unfortunately, on Connecticut Avenue side, on that side of the street, the sun goes down very, very early in the day, whether it's winter or even in summer. In winter, the sun goes down at approximately 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so there is no sun for an outdoor patio. In the summer, it probably extends to about 4 or 5 o'clock. Frankly, we were not looking at this in the summer, so I'm not exactly sure. So this way, we actually have sun all day. So that's the basic thing. In front of you, something.
Businesses, though, have not worried about that.
They didn't have an option.
Well, like I said,
There's also a very widely used, when we can get to the issue of the lights at another time, perhaps, because I understand that's an issue that's already has been before this commission in terms of, again, I would have definitely been here and been part of that conversation had I known about it. But there's a bus stop right there. There are cars that are turning right on red all the time on that corner. It's a very dangerous corner, and you're relegating pedestrians, people with babies and carriages and so on, closer to the road. And I think that's shameful.
Well, it's difficult to be called shameful when we're here to actually try to communicate with the community. So you're allowed by law to go out with a outdoor patio to 8 feet to the curb. In our initial discussion about the outdoor, which we haven't even really gotten to, we've only gone to 10 feet. So that leaves 10 feet. So you're saying we're pushing people out, but 10 feet is quite a lot. It's more than anything essentially out in the rest of the city. So you talked about other places that have corner outdoor patios. As an example, I think it was mentioned here by someone, the diner is right on the corner there, and they have huge outdoor seating, and their actual walk space is, I would say, 4 or 5 feet, maybe, at best.
I actually went around and counted the seating this afternoon. Say they have huge seating. They have 20 seating for 20 people. So quadruple that.
We're getting into a whole lot of areas that are going to be for a different day. I can't spend the whole meeting talking about the public space issues, which aren't going to come up until a later meeting.
I understand it, and I appreciate that, and I just want to emphasize that is because this is an alcohol beverage control
I understand.
discussion. You're talking about people sitting outside on McKinley Street, which is a residential street, albeit close to the Connecticut Avenue corridor, until as late as 2 a.m. And to me, that's a non-starter. It's a non-starter. It's the first in the whole strip up and down Connecticut Avenue. There's nobody doing that. And why are we making an exception for it in this case? I think that's contrary to what the residents and the neighbors want. I don't think an exception should be made for them. I think that you should be listening to what we need and want. And that's a huge, once that is crossed, you're giving something up that will never be gotten back again.
I think the lounge can be open that long and they're out too, right?
Yeah.
But they're not on a residential street with a bus stop. They're Connecticut Avenue. It's not the same. It's just not.
That part of Connecticut Avenue you're talking about, it's not residential, it's a commercial zone.
I understand, up until, however, it's widely used, and I'll be back here for the public space issue. I will, but I'm talking about people, if you don't think sound carries at night, and you don't think, and I haven't even gotten to the issue of the animals, the dogs, and because I understand it's going to be a pet-friendly facility, and you're going to have unleashed animals potentially, and that's a whole other issue that I'm highly concerned about. But I'm talking right now about people drinking, sitting outside at 2 a.m. on the weekends, drinking, and all the noise that brings. And I can tell you, that's just not the neighborhood. It's not what we are right now. So you're making radical changes to the neighborhood with this application.
We're going to cut this off because we've got to take a vote on this today, and we've got to do something about it. We can't do nothing.
But is it possible just to start off maybe just on Connecticut Avenue? I did, one of the points I like to make about it being on the corner was that one side was... Oh, okay.
It's not straight liquor license issue.
Okay, we'll use that one question.
No, I think we're going to have to move on.
Okay. Wanted to find out if there'd be a manager on the premises and until what time? We'll need someone from Mr. Gordon's...
That's a relevant question.
If you want to try to quickly run through the question, yeah, we have to have a manager at all times. We have to have a liquor license person. We have to have a health department person at all times. You know what? I'm sorry. I would run through all the issues, but I can't actually remember them now. If you wanted to give me a quick rundown, I'm happy to.
No, I just wanted to find out who would be...
Sorry.
We need to focus on the liquor license issue and whether we can reach a settlement agreement, which is the form it takes, a settlement agreement with the ANC in order to, alternatively, the alternative is to file protests, and then that would delay your getting the liquor license very substantially.
Now, let me just ask for clarification with the settlement agreement. This is a written settlement agreement, correct? And this will spell out there are parameters for which they're limited, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And what happens if someone is found to violate a provision of the settlement?
The liquor board enforces it. It's enforceable by the liquor board. They can take away the license.
Fine.
So it's akin to if they were operating outside of the hours?
Yes, yes.
I think one issue is the length of time that this would be granted as well.
It's only 3 years.
I know, but I think that I remember quite well in the past of granting it for less than that in other businesses, and I would highly recommend that. Alan, I'm sure you remember.
Alan, do you know whether that's permissible to have it for less than?
They get a 3-year license.
That's what I thought.
But I can bring up the paperwork. I remember it quite well.
But wait, the Magruder thing was for the parking lot.
No, this one was for the liquor license. I personally protested it because of other issues. And we were granted a 1-year license while they cleaned up their act.
That was a renewal, maybe?
Yeah, it may not be applicable for a new license. I don't know. It's just an issue I don't know, whether it can be less than 3 years. But in any case, if there is an issue that arises in the term during the liquor license, you can always go to the liquor board and raise it again. That's always a possibility. And so it doesn't foreclose anyone from bringing a complaint to the liquor board. If there's something we forgot in the settlement agreement, or even, and particularly if there's something that was violated from the settlement agreement, we can certainly go to the liquor board on those.
I do have one other question. First, I couldn't agree with you more about the sun going down and not wanting to have a cafe just on Connecticut. But at night, say it's late at night, 11 or 12 o'clock, is there any consideration to, most likely you wouldn't have 80 some odd people wanting to sit outside, is there any consideration to closing one part of that patio as opposed to the other part that would at least respond to some of these concerns?
I'm assuming you're talking about the McKinley side.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, I would absolutely discuss that. I'd like that to not be too out of place with the rest of the Connecticut Avenue, but I'll absolutely sit down and try to hammer this out in the next couple of days.
No, it's got to be tomorrow.
Tomorrow. I'm available all day.
The reasoning behind it, of course, is that if there are only 12 people sitting outside at midnight having a drink, is there any problem having them on the Connecticut Avenue side as opposed to the McKinley?
Do you feel comfortable in making a proposal and what your thought might be?
Well, I just said it, so that's my proposal. But you know,
as far as the timing,
We're going to 11 o'clock, something like that. Because I think all the other restaurants.
Yeah, 11 o'clock.
Close at 11.
So it's not to say that people can't sit outside, it's just that once it gets to a certain hour of the day or night, that the people that sit outside will be sitting on the Connecticut Avenue side.
You can make that also as part of the public space hearing, which comes in month.
That would address some of the concerns that I've heard tonight.
You do that with the public space.
We could do it as part of the liquor license.
Yes.
You can do it either one.
Right. Okay. So to try to answer the question, I'm absolutely happy to negotiate it down. You mentioned 11 o'clock. I think that would probably work during the week for sure. Friday and Saturday, we might ask for a little bit more, but I think it's a good question, and there's no reason why we shouldn't work with the community on that.
That makes sense, since everything else during the week is an hour earlier than weekends, that maybe 11 at weekdays, date nights, and midnight on weekends, instead of 2 a.m.
So 2 hours. 2 hours less than is typical. But I think I would feel comfortable with that. I think I would feel comfortable.
Yeah. And the ABC board grants the extra hours on certain types of occasions. They do that.
Like holidays?
Right, the special exceptions, sure.
4th of July.
We have a similar neighborhood agreement with 14th Street. Both of our restaurants are 14th Street. And so we'd be happy to do that. I would like to just take a second to think about it and talk to you tomorrow, whether it's, I mean, I feel like 11 is fine on the weekdays, 12 or 1 on the Friday and Saturday. I seriously doubt we'll ever stay open till 1.
We do need to move forward. We've got a bunch of other things on the agenda tonight. We're way behind. Dan, you want to offer a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we protest with conditions be contained in the settlement, within the settlement agreement. The settlement agreement contained, I believe we have the hours of operation, trash 7 days a week. We'll look at the hours on the McKinley side for limited hours of operation. There's a notice of cure. That's definition. Trash 7 days a week, notification of cure, and I think that's it.
No bottles,
And no bottles is contained in the trash.
Did I hear anything about parking? I don't remember that.
Not in the place, no.
And I'm not sure we can do that, because
That's outside.
that really affects everybody on the
Yeah.
avenue. The parking issue is, I mean, if we started down that road, we would have to go to every one of the restaurants on the avenue to make it equal for everyone. We can't give one business an advantage over others.
Oh, I'm saying there's no parking.
I realize that.
Yeah,
It's,
it's not.
and it's a problem now. You do anything on the avenue, it's going to exacerbate that problem. So, I mean, you have more meetings here in the community center, it's going to exacerbate those problems. So, you know, there's really, that's not an issue we can address. We are trying to address it more broadly with the city on the parking issues, parking enforcement issues, those kinds of things. We've had a number of meetings about those issues in the past, and we continue to do that. Dan's been leading the charge on that. So, it's an issue we're very, very sensitive to, but it's not something we can address here.
But the ANC could do like what is happening down near the stadium. They could petition certain streets or certain sides of streets are only for residents. That has happened.
Yes,
across the city.
yes.
We have some of those.
To vote on this.
Yeah, we do need to vote on it. So, Dan, you make the motion, is there a second?
I second.
All those in favor? 7-0, okay, we want, Dan, you want to take the, you'll represent us,
Yeah.
and you'll take the lead on drafting something.
Yeah.
We'll get it done no later than tomorrow, okay?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.
And I'm happy to meet with any of you about your concerns anytime you like.
Just to understand the process, you're going to draft the agreement.
Yeah.
The map will stand for the route, is that correct? Yes. And then the letter will go to ABRA from the agreement.
No, from the ANC.
From the ANC, right,
Okay. And that'll be done before the year.
before Wednesday.
Oh, I did have one last question. The outdoor, do we have a date set for the outdoor discussion?
It'll have to be May 14th, probably, because that's the only time we meet between now and the next Public Space Committee meeting. I assume it's going to be on the agenda for the next Public Space Committee.
Yes, it'll be at late May, May
Right.
24th, I think.
Right,
Okay, great.
So it
Thanks
has to
very
be,
much.
yeah, it'll be on the 14th.
right. Okay. Are we going to be very quick on the Chevy Chase liquor? All right, okay. Circle. Okay, well, let's take that up quickly, and then we have Kim Ford here.
Okay.
I don't want to delay her any longer.
We're here for a discussion and possible vote on the application by Circle Wine and Spirits for renewal of its Class A liquor license, and Christy Chang, she's here representing Circle Wine and Spirits. If you just want to quickly come up here and just say what you have to say, and we'll probably vote on this rather quickly.
My name is Christy Chang. I've been owner and operator of Circle Wine and Spirits for over 10 years now. We're really proud to be a part of the community. I know, I barely look like like I can serve alcohol, right? So we're really proud to be a part of the community. It's wonderful to have been here this long and serve with members. Anybody have any questions?
Basically, the renewal of the application is to continue exactly the same hours and conditions and everything else. It's exactly the same, right? Okay.
This is a Class A license, not a Class C license.
Correct. Any other questions, comments from commissioners? Jerry, you want to make a motion?
Motion to approve the renewal of the Class A liquor license.
Support.
To support the renewal of the Class A liquor license.
A second? All those in favor? Okay, 7-0. Thank you very much for coming out, Kristen. Okay, the next item on the agenda is Kim Ford. She is with us tonight as a candidate, Democratic candidate for DC Delegate. We had Eleanor Holmes Norton here at our last meeting, and so we wanted to give Kim an opportunity to speak to us as well.
I'm also bringing across the elevator, so make sure those who are leaving, I give them all information.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, how you doing?
Chris, you want to introduce her?
Yes, Kim R. Ford is running in the primary for as Democratic candidate for DC Delegate against Eleanor Holmes Norton. I don't know if anybody else is running in the primary, do you know?
Yeah.
Okay, so,
And for those who leave, if you don't mind being over there. Sure, absolutely.
anyway, I met Ford at a meet and greet, and I was impressed by her vigor, and she is interested in coming to the ANC and addressing us. So without further ado, 10 minutes and then time for questions.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciate it. Again, my name is Kim R. Ford. I'm running for Congress here in the District of Columbia. I'm a native Washingtonian. I actually grew up in Shepherd Park, went to Shepherd Elementary School before then going to Sidwell Friends. So I'm a native Washingtonian. This is my city. If anybody may have known my mother, I know in a lot of crowds, my mother was a lifelong public servant who actually spent 16 years on the House District Committee and then was the President Clinton appointee. And so I like to say that I think I got it honest. But I'd like to thank Commissioner Frombaluti and Chairman Speck for having me and all of the commissioners here. So I'll be quick. I know that we've had probably a long night already. But, you know, as I have pursued my service and time in public service, I've been honored to serve in President Obama's administration. I was one of the folks who actually implemented the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, also known as the stimulus bill, $787 billion economic package, the only one that actually came out in the last administration. And so when I hear the current person say, oh, unemployment is at the lowest, I'm like, well, that's because of some of the work that we did 9 years ago. While I was there, I said, I'm from DC, put me on a DC project. The Domestic Policy Council asked me to help lead the neighborhood revitalization efforts at St. Elizabeth, down in Congress Heights, St. Elizabeth, Anacostia area. And while I was there, you know, working on that, I realized that there's so much more that we could do locally. And so to my grandmother who says, who leaves the White House and goes to the junior college, I said, somebody who's trying to do something for the city and for a specific group of people. So I left the White House after being just absolutely humbled by the opportunities that were extended to me. But went to the community college that had just started here in the District of Columbia, started as the director of college readiness and community outreach, and about a year to the day actually became the Dean of Workforce Development and Lifelong Learning with campuses in wards 5, 6, 7, and 8. Very proud of the work that we did there. Was able to take enrollment from 1,600 to over 3,500, completion rates from 50% to over 73%. We brought in tens of millions of dollars and was able to you know, support student success that garnered us national attention, a national award. And because of that, I was actually recruited to lead community colleges nationally at the U.S. Department of Education, which I did for several years before I left that to pursue running for Congress. I'm doing this 100% of the time. You know, I want people to know this is not a name recognition campaign. I'm running to win because after 27 years, it's time for a change. I have known the incumbent my entire life. When I filed my candidacy, I reached out to her and told her I plan to honor your legacy and build upon the work that you've done for the District of Columbia. But now it's time for us to take different approaches, have a different mindset, and instead of just fighting all the time, it's time for us to actually win. So a few things that I believe that we can do in 10 years or less when we're up on the hill. First thing is we actually have to have tangible outcomes on the road to representation. It's not enough to just keep saying statehood or nothing. That gets us nothing. I formerly served on the board of DC Vote. I was actually the vice chair and would be the chair now, except this is considered a conflict, so I had to actually resign. But some of the things that we actually have to do on the road to statehood include getting the floor vote, include getting the federal government out of our local matters. One of the things that that I will certainly start with is the justice system. We're the only place where, you know, if you actually offend in the District of Columbia, you end up in the federal system as opposed to a state or local system, and that is incredibly problematic. So again, the first thing we have to do on the road to representation is get the floor vote and get the federal government out of our local matters. The second thing is we need to take a different approach with the federal government and look at it as an asset instead of an imposition. Right now, we're just saying, oh, the federal government, they're doing stuff to us, it's here, it's doing stuff to us, as opposed to flipping that and saying, you know what, it's here and we can take advantage of it. So I actually think that we should be looking at it completely differently. So for the federal government, one of the things that we can actually do is propose that we have internships in every Hill office and in the federal government and the agencies and their subcomponents for DC residents year-round. That would open up thousands of opportunities for our young people to be on a career path to success, put something real tangible on their resumes. It would give them a network of people who could actually be helpful to them. It would expose them to people from all across the country, and they can actually serve as ambassadors for the District of Columbia, again, up on the Hill and in the federal government. The third thing that we need to do is, again, take a different mindset to the way that the federal government treats us. A lot of times right now we say we're the Peachtree dish, and they like experiment with us and do stuff to us, and that's bad. Well, let's flip that mindset and say that's actually good. How about we actually utilize that for the benefit of the District of Columbia residents? So one of the first things that we would propose is a pilot program for student loan forgiveness. It's one of the biggest issues that's facing the country right now. You cannot pilot it in any state, so why don't we actually pilot it here in DC? That would actually help an entire generation of people who are stuck, who started college but were unable to finish. They have student loan debt, so they can't move forward in their careers. They don't have the credential to move forward in their careers. They can't go back to school because their transcripts are locked. So why don't we actually pilot that here in the District of Columbia? Benefits the residents here, and then the entire country can learn from that. We can scale that. The fourth thing is, why don't we need to be the leader of the region again. We actually used to come together as a region. There used to be weekly meetings where DC, Maryland, and Virginia Democrats and Republicans would come together and say, how can we work together? Right now, we're all in competition. You saw it happen with Metro. We never should have had the regions leaning on each other, saying, you have to do this because Maryland's going to do it, you have to do that. We never should have had that. Same thing with Amazon. I was on the Kojo show recently, and they said, oh, no, Amazon didn't want that. But now they're coming together and saying, oh, by the way, we should have come together as a region. Because at the end of the day, right now, what we have is 3 different proposals where one person will win, meaning 2 lose, or maybe all 3 lose, when we could have come together like we used to as a region to get things for, again, the residents of the District of Columbia. That's how we got the blue bus from Rosslyn to Georgetown, which is now the circulator. We can start doing that again, working with our counterparts. The fifth thing, and this is lowest hanging fruit, is we've got to stop returning federal funds. The District of Columbia continues to return tens of millions of dollars in federal funds, and that makes no sense. The mayor's office is usually the one that bears the brunt of the blame there, and that's not sufficient. The delegate's office should be involved in that. These are federal dollars. This is one way where we're actually treated like a state, as every other state is treated, and continuing to be the #1 state that returns funds in affordable housing and workforce development, 2 of the biggest issues that we have in the District of Columbia, makes no sense. So we would be working in partnership with the council and with the mayor to make sure that doesn't happen, and to make sure that not only are we expending our federal dollars, but then we're using local dollars to enhance those programs instead of sending federal money back only to use our local dollars to supplant those programs. That makes no sense. And the 6th and final thing that we will do is make sure to have an incredibly engaged federal constituent office. Does anybody in here know that you have constituent offices from the federal government? Hands? I would hope so. I would hope the commissioners would at least know that, right? But not everyone's hands went up. And most of the time when I talk to people, people don't know. there are constituent offices. There's one in Ward 8, there's one in Ward 6, and we have to make sure that we deploy the information about what the federal government has for individual residents and also businesses often, not just one-year annual, workshops on something. There's a lot of resources that the federal government can bring to bear that should be benefiting the residents of the district, the businesses of the district, and we should also be bringing out our colleagues up on the Hill with us so that they can meet you and know that the District of Columbia has real people with real hopes and real dreams and business owners that are incredibly productive and adding to the vitality of neighborhoods, as opposed to what we have now where you have people who are here almost a third of the year and have no interaction with real people, such that when a bill comes across their plate, of course they think, well, it's not really DC, it's what I see on TV. We can actually have a much more engaged approach. At the end of the day, people have given up on this office. They look at it as largely ceremonial. We have every power and authority that every other representative has on the Hill, with the exception of the floor vote. And we are so fixated on the one thing that we don't have that we're not utilizing everything that we do have to not only get the floor vote, but everything else that we could get. So with that, I just want to thank you for your time. I'm happy to entertain any questions that you may have, but at the end of the day, it's a very simple decision that I believe, which is the status quo, what you have. If what you have is what you want, that's what you're going to get. But if you want more, and I believe you deserve more, then I hope that you be on board for Ford. Questions?
More of a comment. I love DC vote. We saw a lot of them. They were fighting like hell to get the votes. That's fantastic. Also, I like the fact that you come in 100% of the time. It's really nice.
Thank you.
Any questions?
How's the tuition forgiveness going to work?
Yeah, so, I'm sorry?
Where's the money going?
So that's the thing about it. So for student loan forgiveness, there's like 180,000 different ways that you could actually structure this. And as somebody who's a former dean and, led programs nationally, I can talk to you about all 180,000 ways to do it. But the way that student loan forgiveness has to work is you have to give something to the institution. The institution has to get something. Now, if you think about, filing for bankruptcy, it may not be everything that you owe. So let's say a student owes $10,000. You cannot forgive the whole $10,000. We have to figure out some sort of amount, some sort of percentage, such that we actually can continue institutions. Otherwise, institutions would go out of business. On the student end, what you want to do is put some sort of mechanism in there that the student is actually going to do something, if you will, what they would call skin in the game. Now, you could do that in a number of different ways. You could forgive it such that there are clawbacks in there, meaning that after a certain amount of time, you would pull the money back and the student would be responsible for that which was forgiven. You could put time and service requirements in there, saying that, whether it's military or public service or any type of service, if we forgive this portion of the loan, then you have to give, X amount of years in, and so on and so forth. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that you could actually structure this. But at the end of the day, when you actually look at the number of people in the District of Columbia that this would benefit, when you run the numbers on that, regardless of what levels you want to set things at, it's very doable. And that's why it actually makes a lot of sense to pilot in DC. And you can't pilot in any state because every other state would say that they want it. So you pilot in DC because it's actually the lowest cost that you would be able to do it, but it benefits the entire country because it's a national crisis. You look at, the New York Times just did an article a few weeks ago that said the biggest crisis facing America right now is student loan forgiveness. They're trying to figure it out. And what better way than invest some piece of money into figuring out how it works, then you learn from what we do here in DC and you scale it nationally. So again, it's a small investment, regardless of how you structure it, that would not only benefit our residents and benefit us first, as we should, but would then ultimately benefit the entire country.
Questions? Well, thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is Magruder's renewal application, Dan?
Yeah, the renewal application from Magruder's for the Class A license.
Hello, my name is Ki Yoon. I'm the owner of Magruder's. I've owned the store for 5 years now. Our application is for 3 years with no change in hours of operations. So I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. Ms. Kathy.
Yeah, I'm actually very pleased with the operation of your store. I think you're doing a very nice job. However, the same issues that I bring up each time are still issues. One is the landscaping needs to be filled in. These have always been conditions of the liquor license, so it's not just the parking area. The landscaping needs to be filled in. The trash pickup has to be more frequent. There's all kinds of garbage. I walked by there this evening. There's all kinds of trash in that grassy area on Kinley Street. And third, as I mentioned earlier, the rat problem has gotten worse. I don't know whose fault it is, but all the businesses need to get together. I've personally witnessed rats running across Kinley Street from my home during the day, very boldly. And that's a huge concern. We should not be seeing that. And I don't know, as I say, I suspect it's an accumulation of things with the businesses around, but I would ask that recruiters take an extra special effort against that because you're one of the biggest businesses in that strip of land.
Of course, ma'am. If I can respond. With regards to landscaping, if you have some ideas, I'll be happy to entertain them.
Fill in the gaps.
I know we planted some additional trees on the sides.
I'm talking about the McKinley Street strip. You did a nice job, actually. I really hand it to you because that had been an issue for many years. Some of the bushes that you...
It truly was an eyesore, yes.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, but they're gaps. I like them so much, I want more of them.
Okay.
You know, all the way along the brick, they actually fill it in really nicely. You did a really, that was you wouldn't believe, Alan can attest to some of the landscaping solutions that were tried out over the years, and that's the best I've seen. But just please fill it in.
Of course. Once in a while, the trees that we plant seems to die. It's just a matter of replacing them.
Right, that's normal.
Yeah, it's perfect timing.
There was a storm that came in, there were Bradford pear trees years ago, there was a storm that came in and leveled them all in one afternoon. But those bushes, they're going to grow tall, they're already above the brick wall, just please fill them in.
And then, of course, I do have a full-time parking attendant monitoring the area. So if we have trash issues, that's something that we can address immediately.
I have not seen anybody picking up trash.
Really? I'll make sure to make that his priority as well. With regards to rat problem, I think we've seen a huge upspike of that last year. I think it had to do with the unusually warm winter we had. That was the explanation I was given. It was actually, I was very surprised to find that they actually burrow into the ground. And there were planters on the M&T side of our wall, and we actually saw rat holes. It was unbelievable. I imagine that's actually been going on all over the area. So I work with my neighbors to actually treat that and then to plug that in. So anytime we see things like that, we can work with.
Have you been in contact with the rat man? The district has a rat man whose sole job is to eradicate rats. And they're very good about coming out. Dan's had some good experience with them.
When we speed text, the rat man and I, so
When we saw that, I actually changed our pest control to come in once every week instead of, well, actually twice a week instead of once a week, trying to try to make sure that it's not happening. But it seems like it's a community issue.
But again, in the last month, several times I've seen grazing.
With the warmer weathers, I think that you might see more of that.
We need to get this, that needs to get reported. Rat people, rat eradicators, Ian can help on that too.
It should be reported to 311. So DC
311
can track and evade.
Yeah, and they will come out right away. And so it's not like, you know, this is a government service that is only publicized but never happens. I mean, they actually come out and they will find those rat burrows and they will eradicate them at their burrows. And that has to be done on a broad area because otherwise you don't eradicate all of them.
And on a continual basis too. So every time you put in that app, that 311 app really is the best thing, one of the best things that ever happened. Yeah, and we'll talk to you. And I think what we're seeing, I don't know if it's necessarily warm weather, I'm sorry to get a tangent here, but I think it's funny that you say that. There was further south from McKinley South, there was we had a huge issue, as you may or may not know, for a period of time, the past 12 months, probably at least, right? And it's been quite the fight. Those numbers we've seen to dwindle. I personally think it's also part of a new technique. They're using dry ice, which seems to be working in a lot of areas. So there may be some that are that aren't being killed, that are pushed into another area. They'll only go a certain amount of feet. So, but there could be one or two boroughs that, let's say, are on Livingston that are being pushed to McKinley now. And so we should get them out there.
Well, that's why the landscaping along the brick wall is really important, and the trash pickup. And, there's just trash all the time.
Trash is something that's entirely under my control, so I'll be making sure that we do make daily rounds to pick up any trash on that street.
One other thing, I know it's late, but the trucks have been continually parking on McKinley Street to make their deliveries. That's never been permissible. We've had a memorandum of understanding for 30, 40 years that's not, and specifically attached to the liquor license. I don't know why they're not, they have the alley, they have the lot itself, but the drivers prefer to just park, they're not really parking, the lights are on, the refrigeration is on, the engines are going. And they make their deliveries in front of my neighbor's home, right across from the parking lot, every week, multiple times. So if you could do something on that, that would be much appreciated. So again, that's
On McKinley or on 30th?
McKinley.
So
There's no parking allowed at any time. Yeah.
So they're double parking right at the entryway, right in front of the first two houses, the first house probably.
Usually.
And going up the alley.
On the south side of the street. They're big trucks.
I don't see why they can't come into the lot. We have the lot for that specific purpose. I'll look into that.
That's right.
Yes.
You have the alley, and you have the lot. Many of the drivers are trying to do it quick.
It may be expedient for them to maybe hit more than one location, maybe.
Perhaps.
Bring down to Chevy Chase, so they may do that. But I know last year some residents raised issues with trucks arriving too early, and I communicated that to the drivers, and we fixed that problem immediately. So they're very attentive and respectful to the neighborhood.
Exactly. You've been doing a magnificent job. The issues that I bring up have been issues for 30, 40 years, and they're just things that are routine. They have to be paid attention to. They've always been attached to the liquor license as well as the permission to have parking lot.
I'll definitely look into the drivers parking on the street issue.
Randy, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to support the renewal of Magruder's DC's liquor license, Class A liquor license. No change in hours or operation.
If I could just add something, what we've typically done in the past is include an excerpt from the minutes with that, so we can communicate to the liquor board what our issues were, what concerns were raised. I don't think it requires any change in the language of the license, but I think it would be helpful to just include that.
To include the
extract of the minutes.
An extract of the minutes.
Abstract.
Just take a portion of the minutes and include that. Okay? All right. Okay, with that clarification, all those in favor? 7-0. Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate you coming out. And we do appreciate the Magruders too. You're a very good neighbor and an asset for our community. Thank you. Okay, Abe, you want to introduce the next public space permit application, which we've heard from before as well?
Sure. Hi, everyone. There's currently a public space permit application for 7076/7080 Oregon Avenue to close the existing driveway, to construct a new driveway, a lead walk with steps, and some associated landscaping. We objected to that application because of concerns around the health of a number of trees, one in particular on the property, pending the development corporation or company investigating how to preserve those trees, and a few representatives of the project here to discuss and explain what they've done in response to that, and then we will potentially take a vote.
Great, thanks, David Lansman, Cass Engineering. We presented to you guys back end of February. Main issue was the cherry tree next to the driveway. At that point, we'd indicated to you guys we needed to re-meet with our forestry when the tree budded out to evaluate the tree health. That has since happened. Tree is in fair to good health. Urban Forestry would like us to retain the tree, which we've committed to do. In an email we forwarded Dave and Randy today, Urban Forestry has agreed to and approved our tree preservation plan for this tree. That tree preservation plan or protection plan includes root pruning, tree protection areas, slight limbing up of the tree to remove some below-story branches, just general cleanup. It also includes a tree protection checklist for required inspections throughout construction and following construction. And it includes a developer commitment to inspect and observe the tree and provide aftercare for 3 years following construction. Written commitment that Urban Forestry will enforce, as well as the on-site inspections and reporting. So I think that was the main update. If you guys have other questions, we're happy to.
Yeah, and just to clear up one procedural thing, we received this email at about 1 o'clock this afternoon, so that's why there's not something in front of commissioners about what the plan is. I do have a laptop if someone wants to read it, though.
I got one perfect copy.
Randy has one perfect copy. That's less than ideal.
Urban Forestry was still getting this.
There's a, yeah, but that's why that's the case. I do not have any questions.
I do have some questions. I may have missed this, but I found your letter. Urban Forestry agreed to all of this as well? Was that in an email?
We have an email out to you.
Okay.
Should have been attached to that email.
Yeah, I had not seen this. Well, I had a couple of questions. First is, in the checklist, there's some items that have been scratched out. Why were they scratched out? One is installation of a drip irrigation system, which seems to me to be a useful thing to have.
So those were scratched out by the owners.
So certain items didn't apply to our project, the ones that were crossed out. This is kind of an overall template that Urban Forestry has been working on developing for tree protection in general across the city. Drip irrigation you often use where you build a structure close to a tree and cut off rainfall getting to the roots. So if you were to build an extended deck up close to the trunk, you may install drip irrigation under the deck to kind of replenish some of that water. Our arborist and Urban Forestry didn't think it was necessary for this tree.
The Urban Forestry arborist said it wasn't necessary.
Correct. They've approved the checklist as well as our plan.
Just to be clear, so he's referring to an email from Robert Corletta, who's with the Urban Forestry Division. He said that, Mr. Corletta said, who is this today, that Urban Forestry approves the proposed tree preservation plan as outlined in the letter, which we have, and that the contracted arborist must provide monthly updates, and when any changes are made, they must provide updates as well. But the laws governing tree preservation still apply. You didn't move the driveway from the previous
design, right? So it's 15 feet from the tree, is that right, from the cherry tree?
I believe we're right around 15 feet, I don't have the dimension.
Yeah,
It's the same distance.
I'm referring to the minutes from our meeting on January 8th.
The separation from the driveway to the tree is the same.
Okay. And your arborist and now urban forestry have both said that that's not too close to the tree?
They both agreed that that provides adequate protection for them.
Well, my concern is one from past experience. I think I may have mentioned it previously. But we had a similar kind of situation where the developers, arborist, as well as urban forestry both signed off on construction of a driveway near two street trees. And now the street trees are struggling. And obviously there's no guarantee, but I am concerned still with the proximity of that driveway to the trees, to this one tree. And we've just had experience in the past where you start disturbing the soil around the tree and it's going to be a problem, no matter what kind of precautions you take. In that instance, they were using really state-of-the-art precautions. So is there any possibility of moving that driveway further away from the tree so that it will not have any chance of impinging on the tree? I'm really concerned about losing that tree.
So I'm not sure the other project that you're talking about.
I'm talking about 5330.
And our firm wasn't involved in it.
Your
So
firm
I don't
wasn't
know
involved.
specifics to really discuss on that. I know our arborist has looked at this, and I think what UFA has found, sort of as an aside, or UFA as they're now called, is that this follow-up during construction and after construction is what's really lacking. Not separation, it's making sure that people adhere to plans that they agree to during construction, which, we've seen on this project in particular, you guys see the documents here, but in general, projects across the city really hammering in on this sort of follow-up after construction or monitoring to make sure that if it does start to decline, measures are taken. It's not just said, okay, well, we tried that tree's done now.
All of that was done at this location. We still lost the tree.
I think 5333 is a different condition than a small residence. 5333 is a 10-story building built by a giant contractor with lots of heavy equipment that drove up within feet of that tree, a big tree. I don't think this is the same issue when you're doing a single-family house. How many feet are you from the giant tree?
We're approximately 15 feet. Our arborist and our forestry involved is sufficient.
And do you currently have detailed plans for when you are doing the construction in terms of protecting and preserving?
We do. We have tree protection fence that we set at that limit to disturbance. 6-foot chain link fence, not little. A lot of times they used to use that blaze orange kind of fencing that's easy to drive over. Urban forestry has also adopted a standard now for the 6-foot chain link fence that you hit when you back into it. We'll also be doing root pruning along that line, and limiting work around that is going to be the biggest key.
What happens if the tree is harmed during construction?
If the tree is harmed fatally during construction, we would pay the heritage tree fund, the $300 per inch. It would fall into that category. Our arborists and urban forestry deem that it is a healthy tree that needs to be preserved. So any fatal damage would fall into that category and be subject to that fund.
And I believe you have to plant other trees.
And it would be a replacement planting in addition to that large one.
And that's $300 per inch in diameter?
Per inch in circumference. So
Circumference.
for this tree, you're talking $35,000 to $40,000. Something that, we're certainly not anticipating.
Yeah.
So you could say you're incentivized to make sure that the tree is
Yes, sir.
Okay, Abe, you want to make a motion?
I would move that we withdraw our objection and support the public space.
You can have objection or no objection.
I was so close, Alan. I would
Yes.
Let me try again. I would move that we, anyway, I would move that we
withdraw our objection and therefore have no objection to the public space application because of the updated information and the new plan to preserve trees on the property.
We've never actually filed anything with the Public Space Committee saying we have an objection, so there's nothing to withdraw.
Okay.
Internally, we've had some objections, but it's never actually been, we've never filed anything at
Got
the
it.
Public Space.
I would make a motion that we have no objection and that and we would put this part of the minutes behind it to reflect that we appreciate and understand this plan to preserve trees.
And I'm going to be at the Public Space Committee meeting on Thursday anyway, so I can represent the commission at that meeting. Okay, before we vote on it, is there a second? Okay, before we vote, I just want to express my continued concern, just because I'm worried about the tree. And despite all the assurances that are given. But if urban forestry is okay with this, and one of the things we learned last time was that urban forestry internally objected to the plan to build a circular drive, but never told us that. And so they were sort of pressured into approving it. And so I lost some of my confidence in urban forestry. But yeah, if they're going to go along with this, I'm not going to object on that basis. So all those in favor of the motion? 7-0. Okay.
One question. So when will the driveway be constructed?
So the approximate, I would guess, which months into construction, assuming we start, the goal is to start construction in the next few weeks. We're taking down the house, that won't require any work in the front there. We'll be using the existing driveway. Once building permits are obtained for the new houses, we will start coming in and out of the center. So in a perfect world, we get permits middle of June, so we start using it, mid-July, sort of subject to DCRA permits. We'll need that for access to building.
I just have a quick question, if anybody knows it. Is there a better time to disturb roots of a tree than others, time of year?
Early spring, late fall for root pruning is usually preferred. Tree roots are going dormant, or are still dormant in the spring going on. And we'll be consulting our arborist before any work, so we'll be on site, filling out the checklist and updates for you. If you'd like us to wait a week, certainly receptive to these recommendations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, the last substantive item on our list, and we're only 10 minutes late now, is Chris's issue with another public space permit.
Okay, we talked about this a while ago. Robin, present your, basically what this is a public space permit to construct a new lead walk and steps, driveway, retaining walls, and porch, step projection to service a new single-family dwelling on a vacant lot, 3723 and a half Harrison Street. When this came up, we thought that the subdivision was a little unusual, and so we asked that they get a building permit before DCRA before ensure that this was okay with them. And as I understand that, you've got a building permit, is that right?
Well, as I remember, you requested that you had zoning approval of the building permit.
You got zoning? Okay, so you have approval to subdivide the lot the way you have?
The lot was approved when we came with the subdivision and recorded. And then we now have we're going through the building permit process. We have all of our approvals.
I guess the main issue is the subdivision of the lot. And I thought it was a little unusual, but there doesn't seem to be any neighborhood opposition that I can tell. The only opposition that there was the last time you were here was the neighbor next door who was already built a big mansion bad. So, you could give another present, a little more information.
Okay, well, I brought the drawings again. As you say, we're requesting the curb cut and apron, driveway, the lead walk, and approach and front stoop, projecting. We've submitted for building permit. We've had all of our reviews, and we had comments on 3 sections. We've been approved on 2 of them, and we're still waiting for the re-review from structural. But zoning has approved the plans, and as we said, the subdivision was recorded when I came back in December. When I was here in December. I brought back my signature of 10 neighbors who do not oppose this project.
Did you get approval from the zoning administrator or the board of zoning adjustment?
We didn't have to go to the Board of Zoning Adjustment.
The zoning administrator.
Yeah.
So, you know, nothing has really changed here. I don't see any reason why we should oppose this project. So, unless anybody has an objection.
I just have one more question,
Okay.
sorry. So you're still making your lot go into the steps of the house?
We have a easement filed with the records office that gives private use of that, of the steps. So yes,
That's weird to me, but the government doesn't object to it.
Yeah, so did you see the language of the zoning administrator? Or do you have that information in terms of what they approved?
I forwarded Randy and Chris the letter of when we have had the subdivision approved. I don't remember what.
I mean, the reason I don't object to this is that, you know, if they combine the 2 lots together, they can tear both houses down and build 2 new houses. And I'd rather see them preserve the old house, even with the strain, you know, even with the rather unusual lot arrangement, than have to tear the old house down to allow this the same thing to happen, except for more disturbance. So, and that's the main reason I don't object to this. So I move that we have no objection to this item.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any
Can we
questions?
extract the minutes to go with?
Yeah.
Any comments or questions by the commissioners? All those in favor? 7-0. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. These are subsequent agenda.
Okay, the minutes for our April 9th meeting were published on our website and on the Chevy Chase Community Listserv. Any modifications or changes to those draft minutes? Anyone has? I fixed that, yes, I did fix that. Okay, is there, all those in favor of approving the minutes? 7-0. Okay, checks. Shannon?
There are none for presentation.
Okay, no checks. Okay, there's one additional item that we hadn't listed previously that we're going to take up, and I guess that's the public space application for the Little Beast Bistro. That will be on our May 14th agenda. And in addition to that, the other things we identified was a presentation. And I've arranged this, I think everybody's going to be here. I think we're going to have 3 people speaking both for and against Proposition 77. It's going to be on the ballot on June 19th. This is the ballot initiative to change the way you count tips for minimum wage purposes, so that a person who gets tips will be essentially guaranteed a minimum wage that will increase over time, so that eventually it will equal the minimum wage that every worker has in the district, so that they will be consistent. There are restaurant workers on both sides of this. It is not an issue that restaurant workers are uniformly for or against, and restaurant associations generally are against it. So, but we will have representatives from all of those points of view at that meeting.
So how much time? So with that and extension?
I would think we'd have maybe 30 minutes for it or something like that. I think we can afford to do that unless something major comes up between now and then. The only other thing I've got on the list is a Chevy Chase Wine and Spirits renewal application, so that should be quick.
That'll be a fun one, the Initiative 77. I'm sorry I'll miss it.
Yeah. It is an interesting issue, and you know, those issues were raised in the candidate forum that the Chevy Chase Community Association put on this last week. By the way, that forum was really terrific. It was very, very good. And I planted a few questions there because
that's where they came.
the questioner happened to be my wife. So I planted a few. That was one. Comprehensive plan was another. She asked a bunch of other questions. Okay, I think that's everything then. So anybody else have anything else? Okay, Jerry, we'll miss you next meeting. But have a great time, and it'll
Do my best.
Okay, I'm sure you will. Okay, thank you very much.
About you do not come to me yet. That's right. Okay. And then if for some reason it's Mr. James, I don't mind at all. Thank you. Okay. No, I know you. I'm following you. Exactly, because that's why I'm it's that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I told her I was like false and said, I only have
Kind of not collapsing the, oh, is it still running?
No, it's off. Did you turn it on?
I didn't. Uh-oh.
No, it's recording. So it's
Oh.